Hi everyone, welcome back to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In this video, we're going to go over the armies that Luke and I will be using in our Golem Arcana playthrough. Now, some of the scenarios will dictate exactly which models you should be using, but most of them provide you with an allowance of points that you can spend on the army in the way that you see fit. We're going to be playing the scenario Blood and Sand, and that requires an army of 500 points or less. So let's start by taking a look at the army that Luke has built. Alright, the first character that Luke has in his army is the Devil Jinn. It has a special ability known as Mirage, and that states that this golem always has plus 15 dodge against ranged attacks. It also has 100 hit points, and it costs 2 action points for 3 movement points when it's walking. It also has 3 different attacks. One of them is the Lava Lance. This ignores 10 points of the target's armor. It has Liquid Fire. This attack causes the target golem to take 5 damage per round for 3 rounds. So if this successfully lands its attack, it's going to do ongoing damage. It also has a melee attack called Crush, which has no special abilities, but if you roll a 75 or less, it does 35 damage, which is quite a bit. Of course, the amount that you need to roll is going to be affected by the target's dodge as well. There's a knight inside of this golem, and it has an ability known as Reckless Wrath. Now, this costs 5 mana, but when you use it, the knight's golem's next attack has 20 less accuracy, but gains 20 extra damage. That said, if it misses, it will lose 20 health. So this is maybe a good last-ditch effort. If you think that your golem's going to be destroyed in the next round, maybe use this attack, which may destroy it as well, but you might do a lot of damage. This golem is also equipped with a relic, known as the Tendrils of Smira. This relic is activated like an additional attack that costs 1 action point. But if it hits, it reduces all of the target golem's movement to 0 for 2 rounds. And then you discard the relic after it's been used. Next up, we have the Woodguard unit. This has 70 hit points and a special ability known as Shield Wall. And it says that this golem grants 5 armor to all allied golems in its region, including itself. If you spend 1 action point, it can walk and it gets 3 movement points. It also has a couple of attacks. A melee attack known as Predatory Strike, and it says that this attack deals 10 extra damage if the target is in ground or medium cover. It also has an attack called Pummel. No special abilities associated with this, but once again, if you roll 75 or less, you do 35 damage. The knight in the Woodguard has a Mad Dash effect. Now, this does cost 5 hit points that you remove from the golem when you use this ability, but on activation, this knight's golem gains 2 movement to all movement abilities. So losing those hit points might be worth it if it gives you a strategic advantage by getting to a location on the map that you wouldn't normally be otherwise able to get to in a single move. This is the Sand Lion. It has no inherent special abilities, but it does have 50 hit points, and if you spend 1 action point, you get 3 points of movement. One of its attack, known as the Hamstring, for the next 2 rounds will reduce the target's dodge by 15 if it successfully hits. It has another melee attack known as Bite. This one doesn't have any special effects with it, but if you roll 75 or less, again, modified by the target's dodge, you do 31 damage. This golem is being piloted by a knight that has a passive ability, and it says if this knight's golem lands a successful attack, it does 5 extra damage for the rest of the round. So looking at the attacks again, the Hamstring only does 10 damage. But it requires a 95 or less in order to hit. So you might want to lead with this attack and then follow it with the Bite, which has lower odds of success, but now will do more damage. Luke's Ancient One is the Warrior, and it has 3 different options of abilities it can activate. The first one is Mana Leech. It costs 6 mana, and then allied golems gain 4 mana for their army every time they land a successful hit in the selected region when you activate this ability. He also has Haze of the Damned, which costs 8 mana, and then enemy golems in the chosen region have the accuracy of their melee attacks reduced by 20. And finally, Fury's Claws, which costs 18 mana, but all allied golems gain 15 damage to all melee attacks this round. And this is not region dependent, so this is all of his allies on the board. The first unit in my army is the Winged Preserver. It has 100 hit points and a special ability that says all golems in the region the Preserver flies away from takes 10 damage. So this is kind of an interesting ability because I have two different movement options. I can walk, it takes 2 action points and then gives me 2 movement points, or I can fly, which costs 3 action points and also gives me 2 movement points. So maybe I walk into a location and then fly out of it in order to do 10 damage to all of the enemy units located there. It has some other attacks, of course. First of all, we have the Stumbling Quake. All of the target's movement is reduced by 2 for the next 2 rounds if this is a successful attack. There's also the Lightning Bolt. This ignores 15 points of the target's dodge. And the Scythe, which has no special ability, but again, if you roll 75 or less, modified by the target's dodge, you do 35 damage. And of course, damage as well, we know is reduced by the target's armor. The Knight piloting this golem has no special abilities, so there's nothing to show there. However, a relic is equipped to this golem. It costs 8 mana, but once you activate, you flip over the relic card and place it in the region, and then that creates a totem of a giant skeletal beast that has 2 different attacks. Each attack can only be used once per round, but they cost 0 action points. So this is like having another unit that I can deploy on the map where I want to that can only stand in place but harass any units found there because the attacks are melee attacks only. Next up is my Fire Ram. It has 60 hit points and a special ability known as King of the Hill, and it receives an additional +1 range when in elevated terrain. And that's good for this unit because both of its attacks are ranged attacks. First, I have Fiery Shrapnel, and it says that if the target region has ground or medium cover, the attack causes +10 damage to each target. It also has a Blast attack, and this one doesn't have special abilities. You need to roll 75 or less, and then it does 28 points of damage. The Knight piloting this golem has a blowback effect, and it says on activation, which costs 3 mana, this Knight's golem's next attack, if successful, will push the target 1 region away. In the scenario we're going to be playing, you'll see that you get points from holding certain locations. So this might be a way to kick somebody off of a location I don't want them in control of. The next unit in my army is the Horned Blight. It has 60 hit points, and if you spend 1 action point, it gets 4 movement points. It has a special ability known as Relentless, and that gives it 10+ armor against melee attacks. It also has a Headbutt attack, which doesn't have any special effects, but if you roll a 75 or less, you do 20 damage. And it has a Gore attack. Again, nothing special about this, but a second melee attack where you need to roll 65 or less in order to do 35 points of damage. The Knight piloting this golem has Death's Roar. It costs 1 action point to activate, but then on activation, any allies starting in this Knight's golem's region gain 10 damage to their melee attacks for this round. And an important note here, this ability does not stack with itself. So you can't spend multiple action points to keep buffing up your attack damage. But you should note the Horned Blight actually receives the benefit of this increased damage as well. I have access to the Marksman, Ancient One, and its first ability costs me 15 mana, and it's called Infallible. If there are no enemies in the chosen region, allied non-Colossus golems in the region gain 30 accuracy for all of their attacks, whereas Colossi get 15 accuracy. The second ability is known as Eyes of the Eagle, and it costs 15 mana. For this round, allied golems get 2 range on their ranged attacks and ignore intervening cover bonuses. So I can hit at greater ranges with greater chances for success. So now that we've taken a look at the armies that we're going to be using, let's examine the scenario we're going to be playing, the objectives, and how it's set up. So to start, I'm going to tap on play, And after a moment, it's going to give me a list of the different scenarios we have to choose from. And these are broken down by the cost of the armies that you're going to be using. So you can see here we have the 500-point armies selected. And we have a variety of scenarios to choose from. And I should mention, these are updated by the application over time. So you may see more scenarios in your listing here than what I'm able to show you at this time. We can also tap here to choose the scenarios for 1,000-point armies, or 2,000-point armies, or massive 3,000-point armies. But let's go back to the 500-point army scenarios, because that's what we're going to be using. I'm going to tap on Blood and Sand. On the right side of the screen now, we see a quick overall summary of the objective of the scenario, which in this case is to control locations and destroy enemy golems. If we scroll down a little farther, we're going to see specific objectives for the different players, because sometimes these will be quite different. However, in this situation, they're identical. Players are going to earn victory points, again, by destroying enemy golems and by standing on control zones farthest from the player's starting area, and you're trying to achieve 5 victory points to win. Scrolling to the bottom, we see the map requirements, and this just lists the tile codes that you'll need to set up the map. I'm ready to begin, so I'm just going to tap on Begin Scenario. It's going to load for a few seconds. And now it's time for us to pick the different positions. I'm going to do this by tapping in this location here. And it's going to give me, again, a little summary of what this player position's objectives are. And I'm going to tap down here in this area to select the position. Now we have to add players. And I'm going to use this account right here, which is Rodney J. Smith. I could log into an existing account if I wanted to change the account, or create a new one right from this screen. But again, I'm going to use my Rodney J. Smith account, and now I get a listing of my specific armies that I've built, and I can pick which one I want to use. I'm going to choose the first one here, and then I just need to confirm that I'm going to select this army by tapping in this location here. And now I need to pick the stylus that I'm going to be using. So I will select the stylus known as Rodney, and I will confirm that in the bottom right-hand corner. And now I'm set up. So now we need to set up position 2, and this is going to be for Luke. So I'll tap on this location as well. Gives me again a summary, and I will select the position. Now, because Rodney J. Smith has already been used, it's not here as an option. I could log into an existing account. Let's say someone came over to my house to play and they own Golem Arcana, they'd already created an account and they had specific armies they wanted to use. They could log into their account, they would see their specific army lists and would be able to choose from it. In this case though, we're just going to log in as a guest. So I'm going to tap here and then type in Luke's name. Say done and add player. Now it shows my army list and I'll just pick the second army here and confirm that. And I'm just going to click on Confirm No Stylus. You'll notice it says Continue without stylus association, and it says this can be done during the game. So what will actually happen is once we get into the game, it's going to allow me to pass my stylus to Luke, and it will continue to recognize that. Now, if Luke had his own stylus he wanted to use, he could select and scan that one as well. For now, we'll just click OK, and we're ready to begin the game. So we tap on Begin Game, and it's going to take a few seconds, and it will load. And the first thing we're going to see here is the map layout. So this gives us some information about how to arrange the tiles. You'll notice it shows the tile codes and where those codes are located on the tile itself. So this tells you a little bit about how to orient each of these different sections. Of course, you can just look at the terrain surfaces and get a pretty good idea of that anyway. Here we see where the mana wells should be located. These are the starting areas for each of the armies. It has my name over here and Luke's name over here. And these are the victory point areas. These are the special control areas we need to get to. So Luke's army, if he wants to get some additional victory points, needs to go to this control area. And I need to go from this area to this control area. So I've recreated here the tiles as they were shown in the setup. You can see I have the mana wells located where they were shown. And then I used these tokens. These didn't come with the game. These are just things I had in my personal collection. And I wanted to put them out to show you more easily where the control points are. Bringing up the application on screen here, we see it's time to confirm that we're ready to start the game. So I'll do that. And now it's asking for us to select the turn order. And it says, Rodney J. Smith, your army has the lower build point value. Would you like to deploy your golems first? So not only am I choosing who's going to deploy first, but also who's going to play first. And maybe I'd like to go second, so I can see what the other player's planning to do and then react to that. So I'm going to say that I want to deploy second by tapping there on the application. And so it says, Luke, it's time for you to deploy your troops to the map. To do this, you can just tap on one of your units on their base or on their card, and then tap the location where you want to deploy them. And then once that location is highlighted, just press confirm, and you can just place the unit in that area. For our game, I'll let Luke deploy his units where he wants to put them, but for now, I'll just quickly set them out on the table so you can see how this works. As you're probably recognizing, it's pretty straightforward. Now that all of the units have been deployed, you can see they're no longer highlighted on the screen. We can press the confirm button, and now I need to deploy my units, and I do it the exact same way. I'll select a unit, put it on that area after selecting it, and so on until all of my units are placed and confirmed. Now I'm spreading all of these units out, but there's no reason I couldn't, if I wanted to, put them on a similar location, as long as there's room for them there. Once my army has been deployed, I tap confirm, and now we're ready to play. So there's an overview of how you set up a scenario and the armies that we're going to be using, and I hope you'll join us in a future episode because we're going to be doing a full playthrough of Golem Arcana so you can see how this game works and help us make some of the gameplay decisions. Of course, if you have any questions at all about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.